Welcome, golfers, to the next episode of the Read It, Roll It, Hole It podcast. Today we have another special guest on the call, Mark Crossfield. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. Very much looking forward to it. I think everyone who's ever sort of watched anything to do with golf will know who you are, but it's interesting. I was going to introduce you like as is he a coach? Is he a YouTube guy? And on your Instagram, your bio is quite interesting. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and maybe talk about that.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So I'm Mark Crossfield and I'm really a golf professional. That's what I train to do. I'm a golf coach. I really enjoy trying to learn as much as I can about golf and sharing it with anyone who wants to listen, to be fair. I write that on there because I've definitely see a trend change from people wanting to be golf pros to people wanting to be YouTubers as such. I've never really wanted to be a YouTuber. It was just a platform that allowed me to have an audience to be a golf coach. And that hasn't changed from the start. And it's still the same now. I'm still will happily make videos that maybe won't hit search terms and the rest of it that you need to try and play the YouTube algorithm game, purely because I just think it's a really interesting subject that people should learn about it. I don't mind if people want to be YouTubers, that's fine. It's just that I'm not one of them. And it was always the comparisons often for me that I like, comparing me to a YouTuber was like, well, that's like just wiping off my 20 plus years of experience as a golf coach just because you've chosen to watch me on a platform. Seems a little unfair. I've worked quite hard to gain the knowledge I've gained for you just to wipe it off because you've watched me on a platform. So it's kind of along those lines, really, is why I write that on my Instagram profile.
Got you. I heard you were talking to I think it was My Golf Spy, and you were saying like that you are always sort of running away from other professionals being like in one way or the other. Talk us about that, Mark.
Okay, so that was at the golf show when they talked to me. I just remember when I first started YouTube, it was more a case for me of having a platform that allowed me to show what I was learning as my expertise, allowed me to show people what really I was about and what I was learning and how I could help golfers. And I remember when I first started it, definitely people were very much, certainly golf pros were very anti it. Like they didn't really quite understand what I was trying to do. There was lots of people who would say, why are you giving this away for free, this information? Like we charge for this. And I used to say to them, and it's funny how it's changed. I used to say to them, well, all I'm actually trying to do is inspire people to maybe learn more, which then indefinitely or more often not leads to people taking more lessons. And then as it progressed and time went on, golf pros would come to me and say, oh, God, I love your content. And my students watch it. And I actually point some of them to watch it. And, they even tell me they've come for lessons because you're talking about, there's no such thing as lag. Can you explain that to me? Because I've always worked on lag, and they're booking a lesson with their local pros to do that. So it's funny how that's changed. So for me, stepping away from pros was more, I mean, it was intentional, but it was also more that I was just thinking, well, you're not really going to, I don't want to be a golf pro at a club. I don't want to be that pro. I don't want to be talking to committees and discussing if the bunker on the 7th is too deep for Jim and Mrs. Miggins. Like, I just don't care. I'm not going to do well in those meetings. I'm going to end up saying something rude because I'm just going to think, just like come out sideways. Like you want to chop a bunker up because you can't get out of it. Like, what are we talking about it? So I think it's more along those lines. I kind of just stepped in, and nowadays what's so interesting is obviously it's not such a big step, but in those days it was quite a big step to do what I did. It was to there was no blueprint, there was no money. There was 3 years of YouTube that I did that was not monetized. It wasn't that like, oh, I'm going to go and earn loads of money. I think that's the big difference now with the idea relating back to the first bit with YouTubers and golf pros. Golf pros now use it as a way to earn money, which is great. And there's positives to that. But when it becomes a way to only earn money, then that's when I think it starts really compromising what the platform is actually about to a certain extent, if we're talking about a learning platform, which I still see it as. For me, it's entertainment as well, but it's based around learning and good info still for me, which is where I'm embedded with my ideas of content. So, back in the day, you weren't really allowed to share your ideas. You had to keep them to yourself, because otherwise you were, ruining the magic trick of coaching. Well, I didn't see it that way. I thought, actually, no, why, golf companies are talking about their golf clubs hitting it further when they're not. And golf pros are just secretly being brilliant in their little studios. Like, what's the point in that? Why don't we shout as loud as the manufacturers? Like, that's only good for everyone's business and golfers, because if more of them take lessons, there's a good chance more of them might start enjoying it more because they're playing better. So I think that's what I mean by that. I stepped away very much from what the norm is. And it's interesting now that it is almost the norm, isn't it? I mean, name a golf pro who hasn't got a YouTube channel almost at the moment, isn't it? It just seems like as natural as having a job at a club nowadays, which is, I think, an interesting development.
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting development, isn't it? I think I can only sort of thank you, and there's a few guys who I know of, who I've seen on YouTube. Like, I'm not sure if your mates or know these guys, but Rick Shields obviously comes to mind. Me and my golf. A few others who I can't think off the top of my head, but you do a great job, and I think you do enhance the game. You do increase enjoyment, and long may that continue. Really, I think it's crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, I mean, it has its issues, but it's also a very good platform and a great way for people to, I've had people who watch our course vlogs come up to me and they don't even play golf.
Wow.
Like, oh, I love your course vlogs. Oh, cool. Where do you play? Oh, I don't play golf. I just watch them because they're fun. Oh, cool. That's interesting. And we were talking with Michael Breed recently on a podcast, actually, on our Hack It Out golf podcast. And he said that when he worked with the Golf Channel, what was interesting, I think I have to remember the numbers now, I might be getting these wrong, but it was something like 20% of people who watch golf on telly don't play golf. Now, if you compare that to other sports, I think might have said tennis as a reference, it's maybe nearer 50 or 60% don't actually play tennis who watch it. Yeah. So what's interesting with golf is that you don't actually get that many non-golfers watching, which is a real shame. Would be, I've started watching basketball. I kind of play in the garden with the kids, but it's not as if I'm playing basketball. I'm watching it for the entertainment. And I do think that YouTube does have that benefit where it has the potential to reach people who aren't playing as a level of entertainment, where at the same time it also has the chance to reach people who aren't playing and think of playing, of getting some lessons of how to start into golf before they then go and just jump in and do a lesson series with a pro almost. So there's lots of positives to it.
Definitely. Why do you think golf is at 20% and tennis is at 50% of the viewers?
Well, I think tennis has many advantages. It's faster moving. The athletes are better specimens to look at. I mean, if we're actually going to talk about, what you're watching a visual piece of entertainment, the ball's moving fast. It's basically, it's so evident that it's a combination of physicality and touch, where golf isn't. You get so many different shapes of golfers. You get different ages. Tennis players are young. I mean, I remember when I first went to Wimbledon when I lived in London, and I just couldn't believe how amazing, you get really close on the outside courts at Wimbledon, and the practice courts, you can get really close on couple of the courts up by the first entrance. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, these people are so good looking, as in their bodies were they're not normal people. It's only that they're all like it that you don't notice it as much, but you stand next to one, and this is the women and the men, and you just think, oh my God, look at their legs, look at the muscle, and then look at their arms. And I just remember thinking, they are just complete athletes, these people. And I'm talking the outside courts at Wimbledon. This isn't Federer and Nadal, who are also at that level of athlete. Where I think golf maybe isn't able to appeal quite on the fast moving fun, and golf is can be very sterile on telly, can't it? It's middle-aged to older men generally talking about back in the day. That never really works for enlightening people's enthusiasm. And I think a great example is, I mean, I would like to know the numbers of people on the 17th at is it the 16th, I think, sorry, the 16th at the Phoenix Open,
Yeah.
Waste Management, which is happening as we record this. And I've been to that event and seen what goes on in there and around. And I remember distinctly saying to Matt, who I went with, saying, this reminds me of Wimbledon. Like, you go to Wimbledon and it's men, women, old, young, and you know they're not all tennis players because they're there for the beauty that is Wimbledon. They're there for the shot. They're there to sit in the sun and watch a bit of tennis, which is easy to digest. And I do think the 16th Phoenix Waste Management doesn't get the credit it deserves in golf. Obviously, lots of people don't want that kind of atmosphere all the time. When there's some arguments to say, well, what if you did put that level of entertainment in every event? Yes, it wouldn't be what we understand is traditional golf, but what would it do to participation? And I'm not saying that's my opinion. Let's do that to every part of golf. But if we don't experiment with more than just one tournament that's taken upon itself to try and create an arena of excitement in golf, which, I mean, it would love to know how many people are in that arena on 16s that play to don't play. I reckon you would have a higher percentage of a non-playing population in there than you do on the average. I mean, I've been to the Open lots of times, and I would argue at the Open, the percentage walking around is high of golfers that play, because you don't trudge around dunes in the wind and rain, you know, for fun. You've got to be like a golfer to do that. So I do think there's many reasons, and I think it's, you know, tennis is fast moving, great specimens of people. There's panting, there's jumping, there's fist pumping, there's action nearly on every shot. Golf could be more that way, but it chooses to stay a little bit more reserved, possibly.
It's interesting views. It's I think, like, obviously they are trying a couple of things, aren't they, to make it a bit cooler, if you like, but you know, with music playing stuff. But there's lots of things you could do like that. The stadium there.
Yeah, I often think some of the things they do are so they're so unimaginative and basic that they verge on embarrassing.
A bit fake almost.
It's very forced. It's very forced. So music on the range, that idea, like you say, like, that's not attracting anyone, is it? Really? Anyone taking up golf more now because there's music, or anyone going more to the event because there's music on the range? And you've still got the same stars of your show. So now you've got music on the range, but the same group of athletes that we see every week. Like, it's just, you know, I would say what the 16th that the Waste Management does is, well, I mean, it feels more like what I'm watching in the basketball matches. And if I look back at history, because obviously there's no spectators in most of them as I watch at the minute, but when I look back at a bit of history, you know, the intimacy of the court stroke that crowd, and how close the players are acting to that crowd, and the atmosphere in that arena of the fast moving end-to-end game of these amazing athletes doing jumps and moves that you look at and just think, wow, how are they doing that? That's so impressive. And I think the Phoenix Open tries its hardest to recreate that a little bit. And I definitely would like to see more of it. The same debate comes up every week and nothing changes. Nothing changes. The winner of the Open, if it plays this year, will still have someone going, and the winner of the champion golfer of the year, shooting XXX, is like some stale, old, like uninspiring human doing the most stale announcement. Sometimes I think tradition hurts golf as much as it helps. I think sometimes it hurts it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Did you watch the Jordan documentary, talking of basketball?
I did. Isn't it great? I mean, that actually is one of the things that kickstarted me into thinking, oh, maybe I should check out. I mean, I've bought a subscription to the NBA. I follow the Lakers, and I'm watching. I literally just watched the match this morning. They won against the Nuggets last night. I watched that documentary, and then it led me on to think. I go to America a lot, and I used to before, obviously, pandemic issues. And if every bar you go into in America, there's 100 screens showing different sports. And
Yeah.
I always would gravitate towards the basketball. Like I would watch it thinking, that looks really cool. Look how quick it is. Where the American football, I kind of a bit like, I'm just not quite sure what's going on. It stops a lot. There's the action. I'm not getting where the action is as much. So if I sat in bars, I would always look more at the basketball. So it always intrigued me, and I'm loving it. I'm literally following the Lakers every game at the minute because they play like 3 a.m. our time. So I wake up the next morning, make sure I don't see the scores. I do some edits in front of the telly and watch the match, which goes on for about an hour and a half. And it's really
Nice.
good. And I'm not watching like every play. I'm editing as I watch, but it's not like football where you sometimes have to wait a long time for any action. If you're like a casual watcher, you can have 0-0 draws, which I'm sure football lovers go, it was a great match and a good. I watch it and I just wanted to see some goals. I don't care about football that much. Where, basketball, it's action constantly. Like if they don't, if they're not shooting a basket within 2 minutes, the commentators like going, they haven't shot a basket in 2 minutes. This is outrageous. Like it's constant flow, which is fun to watch.
Love it. I think the back nine of the Ryder Cup's like that. Last nine on the Sunday, right? Action everywhere. You don't know. You're trying to work out the score. It's just exciting. You don't hopefully anyway, it's like that.
Yeah,
normally.
I would agree. I think the Ryder Cup does touch on the more positive side of where golf could go, even to that noise on the first tee, isn't it? Like that's so much more, I think, appealing to the audience that doesn't play golf as an entertaining spectacle. But then if you think about it, if you've got 80% of people who are watching and supporting golf don't want that, and I'm not saying every percent of 80% don't want that, but let's just pretend a large percentage of golfers want it to be more traditional, you can see why it's going to get stuck in a cycle, can't you? Because why would you upset your key audience? Like if your key audience are golfers and there's only 20%, like at some point someone's going to have to go, do we upset our key audience in an effort to gain a new audience, or do we just do what we know? And as you know, when there's a lot of money at stake, you look at the TV rights that these companies pay for. I mean, I think Lou told me the numbers that the PGA Tour sold the deal of the TV rights off recently. They're going to err on safety, caution and safety, because we are talking millions of people's money that producers are going to be responsible for, basically. So why would they try and challenge anything? And again, leads you back to YouTube, isn't it? It just leaves it open for that space to try a bit harder, which is what you see. You see people trying harder to create content that engages golfers, where you don't see it from the TV networks so much. You see it a little bit in their production. I wouldn't say their production's increased and improved, but if that's not increasing people's value or participation in watching, then really you're just making prettier lit, better sounding pictures rather than actually inspiring anyone to come along and watch a game that they don't play, possibly. But yeah.
Interesting. Going back to Jordan, what was the biggest sort of takeaway or thing you learned from that documentary?
I don't know. What did I learn? I loved the team spirit of it. I loved his ability, and obviously it's hammed up a little bit because it's a TV series, but I loved his ability to get upset and then say, I'm going to do this now, and then do it. So he would change games. He wouldn't win an award of the best player, and then he would spend the next 5 or X amount of games going, right, you didn't pick me, and look what I'm doing. He seemed to be really able to just let his emotions and his competitiveness flip him on in situation, which was really fun to watch. I also watched it and just thought, that's Tiger, isn't it? That's what the things he's saying. I can see why now Tiger came out as a young player and started saying the things he said. I never forget Tiger on an interview on the good old wooden BBC and I think it was the Masters, and they said, what are your expectations this week? And he said, I'm here to win. And I remember hearing that thinking, oh my God, the UK audience is not going to like that, because you're not allowed to be that confident in the UK. You're meant to say, I just want to get out each day as it comes, the standard TV answer. And he just went, I'm here to win. Why would I turn up if I didn't think I could win? I'm here to win. And I remember hearing it thinking, wow, that's amazing. This kid, I hope he is as good as he thinks he is, because this could be brilliant. And then I watched that documentary and I kind of think, yeah, I can, there's bridges I can see. I don't even know if Tiger does use Jordan as a role model or not, but I don't think you could live in the States and not really understand what Jordan was about. He was, he was a global superstar, and in the States, he's like royalty, it seems, as I understand it, which is basic understanding. So yeah, I loved the team aspect of it, because it wasn't just about him. I got to learn about Pippin and stuff that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
And Dennis Rodman, that I remember Dennis Rodman more because I had MTV in my house as a kid, and he would appear doing wild things on there. That's how I knew him. And then he's on, I didn't really know he was in that team. And so it was nice connecting some of those dots. But I remember just watching it thinking, yeah, this guy just is so confident. Like, it's brilliant to watch. And the politics of it all was interesting as well, of the coach to the manager of the team to the owner. They were all interesting discussions as well. It was a really good series.
The owner was it was an interesting one with the owner, I thought, where Jordan seemed to fall out with him almost on purpose to give him inspiration to play better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also never knew that he took a break from basketball and went and played baseball. Like, how brilliant's that? And I knew he was a keen golfer because I've seen him in pro-ams and stuff I haven't seen him in the flesh, but on clips.
Yeah.
And I've been saying this a lot recently, because obviously there's the talk of the 48-inch shaft going back to 46 and those kind of ideas, which is like, I've got no real problem with that, to be fair, but it does make me think. Like, I look at the basketball players that I watch at the minute and just think, wow, just imagine if they played golf. Like, the athletes that we are not attracting to golf, like, we are nowhere near where the human can go. We could have such exciting times if we are able to reach out to different athletic groups. And obviously I understand why basketball players are tall. It adds as an advantage, but it also adds as an advantage to golf if you can equate that into speed. So I do look at those guys and just think, oh man, just imagine if Jordan was Tiger's dad's son. Do you know what I mean? Like, where would that have gone? Because Tiger was amazing, an athlete, but Jordan's 6'7", I think, and equally as an athlete. Like, where is that going if he's got Tiger's delivery skills? And I would love to see it go that way a bit more. I don't see that as scary. I see that as exciting. And I always think it's interesting that golf gets so scared about the potential of those moves in human performance. I think they're really exciting.
Me too. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? That distance thing. Like, nobody's like going to complete the game. Like, if somebody shoots like 59 4 rounds, would they shoot whatever that is, like 40 under or something?
Yeah.
But nobody's got close to that, right? Like, and that's not completing it.
I mean, I've done a real crash course in the distance debate, because I didn't really ever engage with it, and I'm a bit more engaged with it online now, and I've really tried my hardest to learn as much as I can from both sides. And the biggest thing that stands out for me with that debate, which is interesting, I can see why it always gets so heated, is the amount of cliche that's used in it is ridiculous. And I don't mean that's even from one side. To be fair, it's from both sides. Both sides, the pro rollbackers and the anti rollbackers, often are using a lot of cliche to try and put out a discussion for one's better or the other, which is that. And I can see why people get so frustrated in that discussion, because I just think, yeah, well, they don't want rollback, but what they're saying actually isn't true there. That wouldn't happen. And they do want rollback, but they're asking for things that are already happening. So, like, why are they upset? Because they're saying, well, if you look at the data, what they're asking for is actually already happening. Like, what? So that's the biggest thing that stands out for me, is how messy that discussion is, because it's definitely riddled with cliche on both sides of it. It's an interesting one.
It is. Yeah. It's almost a bit like COVID. It goes over my head a little bit, and I just sort of let people crack on, because
yeah, I mean, it's not a simple debate, and that's the other thing. You often get people go, oh, you just got to do this, it's simple. It's not simple, and what you've said you've just got to do actually wouldn't work. So just an example, one of them is that, oh, we just need a ball that it'll come, it won't go as far, and so on and so forth. It's simple. I think, well, I can hit a ball with 4,000 revs at a ball speed and get it 102 yards, and I can hit the same ball speed with 2,000 revs and get it, 301 yards. So I can hit, let me just do that again, 301 yards distance with 4,000 revs at a ball speed. Okay, at the same ball speed, I can hit the ball 305 yards with 2,000 revs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking 2,000 revs difference on a drive, and I can hit with one ball speed within 4 yards of each other. So saying just add more spin, do it's simple, it's not, because, well, even when I've tested with old Bellatas, I can beat the spin. I beat it in 5 shots. I've got a video of it. I beat the spin, which was about 1,500 more, literally in 5 shots. And that was without changing my equipment drastically, because I didn't have the equipment for that ball as such. When people say simple, it's not simple. It's an interesting debate. If it's simple, it's only simple if you don't want to understand the ins and outs of the debate.
Definitely. Did you watch Tiger's documentary last week when it came out a couple of weeks
ago? No. I don't even know what channel it's on.
It's on Sky. It's definitely worth the watch. It's pretty.
Yeah, I'll watch it. I don't watch. Deep. I haven't got Sky, but
okay.
Yeah, I'll
find a way to watch it.
I've heard a few people talking about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. He talks, obviously goes in depth with his dad and how he treated him as a kid. And there's a debate, isn't there, that it's like on borderline abuse. I don't want to use that word without upsetting anyone by saying that. But yeah, it's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, I've heard a few people comment on social that it was maybe not as romantic as they wanted it to be. So again, I quite like the Tiger chats, because I think Tiger's great and I love what he is and what he does for golf, but I've got no romantic love for Tiger. I don't think I've got any romantic love for any golfers. Do you know what I mean? They're golfers and that's what they are. Like, I love what they do, but I'm not, I can generally look at Tiger with a little bit more of a balanced idea, where it's very interesting when you do any Tiger chat. It's like talking about, I don't know, you can see people are very emotionally sided as fans, and then the chat becomes just not really relevant because they're just showing their emotions rather than actually any fact-based ideas. So I'll look forward to seeing it if it becomes available on a platform I've got, because it'll be interesting.
It's good stuff. It's interesting, that debate with, like, I love Tiger. He's like my, one of my golfing idols. I've got a image of him going up in the new studio. Like, you know, I love it. But like my missus would be like, oh, but how can he be your idol as he's a, naughty boy off the golf course with all these women and stuff? And I'm like, I'm not really I don't know the bloke. I'm not interested in too much of that. But what he does on the golf course and what he's done for golf, as you say, is like, he's just like God.
But I mean, I would agree with your partner there, as in, I do think his shenanigans off the course, golf has a really interesting way of being able to brush issues that relate to the general public more away. I think it's quite an interesting debate, and something I will do something on as we go on. I do think it's interesting. I don't know. It'd be interesting if other sports personalities would get away with what he did as a human. And I'm not, this isn't my judgment. I'm kind of not over here nor there, but I think it's more interesting I would argue that the golf media is probably the most politest and on the side of, say, the PGA Tour and what have you, than maybe other medias. And that then does then beg the question, is that actually right? Because obviously, so if I class myself as golf media, which I've gone to events as media, if you like, you can't have a fair opinion about that event. If you start saying anything about that event that you see that's wrong, you won't ever come back. And then you probably won't get invited to any. It's a very golf vacuum environment that the golf message is being delivered to golfers, and I don't think they see that. And I just think that, so the Tiger ideas off the course seem to be quite easily brushed away, where they wouldn't be if it was more public arena, like a pop star or what. It's because the media don't maybe want to go down that line, because then they will never get that interview with Tiger. And they want that interview with Tiger because it's worth clicks to them. And then they won't ever get an invite, say, to the Masters, because you know, they've offended someone there by offending one of their champions or what have you. I'm not saying that's the case, but it's that kind of idea. And then that leads on to ideas of, well, actually, then we're not really getting a fair press, are we? If you think about it. So I hear what you're saying and I understand that point of view, but at the same time, it's interesting that we're able to brush it away as well. Where I do think other sports and certainly entertainment-based products, because at the end of the day, the PGA Tour is an entertainment-based product. We call it golf, but it's not. It's Wicked the musical. It's no different. It's a traveling show. But it doesn't get the scrutiny, of course, maybe that others would, which may be fair, might not be. I think it's a really interesting debate. I'd like to know where people go on it, because it's one that just gets brushed away. Because I would then relate it a little bit to the homophobic slurs of JT, for instance. It's very interesting how I saw that as a great example to show the horrendous issue golf has with homophobic ideas in its sport, but it seemed to just want to brush it away. It just like brushed it. It was a great opportunity to maybe highlight the problems that golf has, but rather than do that, it's kind of just like, let's just get that away. We don't want that kind of press, to sweep it away. And I think that's an interesting debate in itself, because you just need to look at any of the responses to posting about his slur, and people are like actively trying to defend him like it was all right. Well, by trying to defend JT, in effect, you're offending him, because he has categorically apologized and has gone on record saying he wants to be a better human and should never have done it. So by defending him, you are actually highlighting that we have an issue, because he believes there's an issue, wish he never have said it, wishes that word wasn't in his vocabulary, wants to be a better human, yet you're saying it's okay. So by definition, you're highlighting that we do have a bit of an issue here, one that we should maybe get out in front and air and get it gone, rather than just brush it away until the next thing comes along. And I think it's an interesting mix of press to who actually holds the button to allowing that press to earn any money, which is what it basically comes down to.
Yeah, interesting debates. I think, like even on the golf course, you know, the saying that the male members have, like, if you don't drive it past the ladies' tee, you know, you get a forfeit and stuff. There's so many of those sort of.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started filming, and I had to say to people, you know, like just they would say something and say a phrase. Like the classic one was, "Did you drop your handbag?" Remember, like, so if someone hits a putt halfway, and I would have to say, "Right, Matt, cut that bit out." Like, just, you can't say that. You can't say that. Like, Matt didn't say it. I'm saying as in he edited it, but someone would hit a putt and say that, and you would say, "Oh, you just can't say that. That's not what we're about, and it's wrong." It's definitely in our game, and I think it's a really good discussion to get it out and up and front and center and talk about it. But like I say, golf never seems to want to actually talk much about the issues, does it? I mean, if you look at the Distance Insight report and Rory's statements around the ideas of the Distance Insight report on his interview recently, saying that there are far bigger issues. I mean, the gender equality in our game is massive, yet we're talking about 1% of people on tour who hit the ball a bit too far for a few courses, and that's worthy of a massive study and a rule change. 50% of the population aren't really getting that much access to golf, like 7 days a week in a fair, like, you play major championships and have done in the past at courses that don't even allow women members at certain times, and you think the bigger issue is that 1% of 200 people hit the ball a bit too far? Like, it shows you often, I think, maybe where we get it a little bit wrong.
Fascinating debates. Okay, Mark, let me get my my numbers up here. So YouTube views you've got, and subscribers, you got 335,000 subscribers today, according to what it says, and over 223 million views. What does that mean to you when I say that?
It's interesting, actually. The 220 million views is quite a funny stat, isn't it? When you say it out loud, it makes me proud and really kind of in debt to anyone who feels that they can watch me, and if any way I provide a service to any of those people is a responsibility and something that I love, trying to deliver them the most honest and thoughtful content I can. I'm also not a massive stat person that way. I should be more with my channel, to be fair, because it is one of your like cheats if you want to, you know, push certain numbers. But I think often, you know, the videos that I make don't relate to those stats. As in, I make the videos I think are best for the demographic or for the people who might want to hear it. And sometimes even the information that I've learned, I think is really interesting that maybe isn't out there. And I want to put it out there to start a debate and get people thinking differently. So I actually don't really look at those numbers that much, to be fair. It's a funny one because I'm not really I love it and it's great and there's benefits to those numbers, but that was never really my intention, and it kind of still isn't. Like, I still make videos that don't try and drive those numbers in any way, because I think the message is still just an important message. Because I do think that's the difference as well. If you do start wanting to delve into those numbers and really start to manipulate them, which is easily is not fair, but can be done, then you have to question what your goals are as a content creator. And my goals are to, like, I'm just loving learning about stats more at the minute, as in even reading them. In club reviews, I'm delivering different ways of how we present our stats, which I don't think anyone else has done before or doing, which hopefully are helping people understand what an actual gain is and isn't. That excites me more than looking at my stats and thinking, oh, I should just make that video over and over again, or this demographic of video, even though I think it's ridiculous and a bit dumb, does really well. So I might just keep doing that. Because for me, I think as soon as I go down that road, I might as well go and work in Sainsbury's. Like, I'm not doing it for that. That's just a side effect of, and I'm grateful for it. But it's never been my real intention, to be fair. But like, they're fun numbers. They're big and they're nice, but they're a product, hopefully, of the hard work and learning that I've tried to go through and share with the audience.
It's nice to hear that, Mark, like that you still got your core values. I say still, but you obviously those numbers, you say that you don't look at them too much. Like, that's what pays the bills though, right? The more
Yeah, they do,
I guess.
well, along with other things as well, which
Sure.
haven't changed. And again, they paid the bills a bit more by a result of, rather than me thinking this needs to pay the bill, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So I would say really my content hasn't changed, or the key ethos of my content hasn't really changed over the years of doing this that much, hardly at all. Like, the same messages there, go and get fit. The same messages there, go and get lessons. The same messages there, I've discovered this idea, I'll share it with you. You know, maybe you should use this idea when you're fitting or when you're coaching. And if you're a punter, you know, someone who's taking lessons and getting fit, maybe you should take these ideas into your lessons and ask these questions, because it will only push our industry to be better at what it does. So even though those numbers, like you say, they do pay the bills to a certain extent and are fun, it's not the drive. If they were the drive, you would see a very different content coming from my channel.
I appreciate that as well, that that honesty from you, and that it's great to hear that as I said, your key values are still there. So that's good.
But it's what turns me on. Like, that's what turns me on in my profession.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to change what I find exciting. Like I say, I'd rather go and work for a company that gives me a pension and the rest of it than have to just like change what I want to do and make it less enjoyable just because that's what the audience wants. And if you think about it, like I always say this, think about how the YouTube platform works when people talk about subscriber numbers and views and those kind of things. The algorithm allows the audience to judge what is right and wrong and what is good and bad. So that's your lessons coming into your new studio in Bristol and going, you are not going to teach this lesson. I am going to tell you what you're going to teach me. So do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The algorithm of YouTube is no different to lessons coming into your studio and telling you that putter's better than that putter for me. and you tell me you want to swing on this path, but I'm not. I'm going to swing on this. They're deciding. So there's a part of me that thinks, and I joke about it with Matt, who I work with, if we were getting too popular, we'll be doing it wrong, because how many of your students are coming in with the right ideas? They're not, are they? They're generally wrong. That's why they're coming for help.
Yeah.
So by definition, if you think about it, if you're tapping into what makes people think that it's right, they're judging that this information is right, you're actually not, you're giving them what they want rather than helping them, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like if you're talking about educational based ideas, and that's what I think is funny. That's what people often miss. This understand the algorithm. The algorithm is built around the user marking down what's right and wrong. That's why I giggle at the platform and say that it's a double-edged sword, where it's brilliant. It's also very dangerous, because anyone in the UK remember News of the World, Sun newspaper, those kind of tabloid press that got into hideous messes by trying to give the audience what they thought they wanted, even down to hacking people's phones, which was just disgusting.
Terrible.
And I see it as that way a little bit. It's like, well, if the audience are going to choose, then you have to make a decision if you want to challenge that audience, which some of them won't like, or if you just lap up and say, yeah, keep your head down. Yeah, you'll let it better if you keep your head down. There you go. Loads of views, loads of subscribers, because I told them to keep their head down. Brilliant. Thanks. Like, I'm not doing that.
No, you're making people worse by saying that.
Yeah.
So I'm about to ask you a question that I'm sure you've been asked millions of times. But before that, I'm going to ask you a question that I reckon you've never been asked.
Go on.
Let's say you start working at Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
And they say, Mark, hey, you used to do some video stuff. Create us a video in Sainsbury's that's going to be really cool. What would you do?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know, but I would make it fun and I would make it work.
Come on, think about it.
Well, I can't. I'd have to. I have my best ideas for those. Normally about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep. I would need to stew on it, but I would be able to get around that little conundrum. It's those kind of conundrums in my field that I love. How can I do a video? I've just done a video recently on the idea of regression to the mean, a stats-based, very stale idea of working out where there's an improvement or not, subject around your standard deviation to your mean and how apart they are, basically.
Okay.
And I was speaking to my stat guy about like how, I want to do this video because I think it's really important. And he said, God, it's going to be so boring. Like, we're talking about a real sterile subject here. And I did one, and the views are relatively healthy. The interaction on the video is great. The debate it sparks up is brilliant. The questions it leads on to. So I do quite enjoy those kind of challenges of like, how can you make this boring subject in any way educational and also appeal to people? And that's kind of the challenges I face every day. How I'd do that in Sainsbury's, I don't know. I'd have to work there for a bit to understand it more. But it's a good question, but one I'd have to come back to you on.
Okay, I'll give you 15 minutes.
Yeah, thanks.
So the question you get asked all the time, I'm sure, what's your favorite content and why?
On YouTube or anywhere?
Anywhere.
Well, I love films. I'm a film buff. I mean, this whole desire of making content has come around my love for movies. So I use Netflix, Amazon Prime. I own a lot of films that I can watch films 5-6 times. I can just keep watching because there's new edits, there's new camera movements, there's new dialogues that you just didn't realize what it meant that kind of come through if you watch them over again. So I've always been a pretty big movie buff. And I'm also really enjoying the way that Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus are converting long form movies, if you like, into series. Like if you think of a good series, like if I take Breaking Bad as a great classic, one of the all-time best series on any, we call it TV, but one of the platforms. That's a 2.5-hour movie at best. You don't get any of the rich character development that you get in the X amount of series of each episode, an hour long and 10 episodes per series kind of stuff. So I'm a movie fan. I love the production, the artistry of trying to purvey a message through cinema, but seeing that develop into series at the moment, I'm also really enjoying. Things like, you know, just like Breaking Bad, Sopranos. I've watched that 2 or 3 times around. It's just, they're films, but based over a much bigger period of time, and you get these amazing character arcs, which are just, I love. So yeah, content wise, I'm kind of film buff now turning into series buff, basically.
Love it, love it. Amazon Prime's cool. There's some good like football stuff on there, and
Yeah, there's some documentaries, isn't there? I've watched the Maradona one. I really enjoyed. I had no idea of his history, and I felt that was very, very interesting.
oh, was it? I
Yeah,
didn't see
yeah,
that one.
it's
I didn't
worth
see.
watching. Yeah, I didn't know that he played for the club he played for. I didn't know that he had such issues with the first club he went for. Like, it was interesting. You could see how the wild character that we know became that way and was shaped a bit by football to become that way, not taking away from his responsibility because it was his as well. But you can see through his life how he was being shaped to end up the person he ended up. We often see the end result and just judge that, where actually, if you go back and look at the journey that they've taken, you might have a fraction more compassion for another human being when you look at some of the things that he achieved and also achieved on and off the pitch to try and get to where he got to. It's a good one. You should watch it.
I definitely will. I definitely will. So what's the coolest thing that's ever happened to Mark Crossfield, right? What's your job, if you want to call it that like, obviously our jobs sometimes take us to places that like we wouldn't normally be able to afford, maybe, or whatever. Like, what's the coolest thing that's ever happened? What's on like the highlights reel? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So I'm going to forget. There's so many, and I'm going to forget some and regret not mentioning them. But I mean, number one, traveling the world. I've seen so many parts of the world, and that's been fantastic. Like, just, you know, I live in Devon in Exeter, which is fantastic for my family, and it's easy and a nice place to live, but you wouldn't want to just stay in Devon. You know, it's very, very safe and small and cozy. So traveling, like, I've been to loads of places in America. I love going to America. I've been to Iceland, which was just, I've been to Iceland twice. I went there on a filming trip and then came back and took my family there because it was just blew my head off how beautiful of a country it is. Not only are the people just so friendly and fantastic and such a lovely atmosphere, but also the scenery there was amazing. Getting to interview Rory McIlroy was fun. On his Periscope, when Periscope was big, that was fun. Just chatting with him like we're chatting here now. He was so honest and open. That was fun and an interesting, you know, it's literally like all of a sudden Rory stood in front of you and I can ask him a series of questions. This is crazy, isn't it? And I'm on his Periscope asking them, like, what have we got here from my little hut in Exeter? Like, it was one of those moments where it was like, this is mental, isn't it? So that was good. What else? I mean, just playing golf all around the world with Your Golf Travel has been amazing to see how golf is played and used and what it means to different parts of the world. It's been good.
Favorite course?
Oh, Sawgrass is hard to beat. I'd like to play Sawgrass again, Stadium. That was just
nice.
I loved it. It's such an amazing course. And like the 17th foot Sawgrass is it's an Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
It's an Arc de Triomphe. It's a Grand Canyon. You know, it's one of those places that you go to and you've seen it loads and you kind of know where everything is, but you've never been there. So it's a bit surreal. It's like, I know the 16th is there. And you walk down the 16th and you look right and you think, I know that, like, you just know where everything is, but you've not been there, which is often a bit of a surreal, like, this is crazy. I've been here so often in my mind, to now be stood here was special. So Sawgrass was fun. Torrey Pines was interesting. I had a hole in one at Torrey Pines with the Callaway boys one year. That was really fun, just to have a hole in one on a US Open course. It was on camera. Nice. Torrey was really interesting to play because it's, again, a course I've watched so often and heard talked about so often. Working with the manufacturers has been amazing. I was sponsored by Titleist for 2 years, which was an amazing relationship, an amazing company, really lovely group of people doing some amazing work, and learning from their experts has been amazing. I've been to Ping HQ, learning and always learning from the team at Ping, who share information so openly, has always been a highlight, and getting to speak to them and go in the Enzo room was amazing with them. Now with Strixon, I haven't had a chance to go over and visit them because of pandemic, but we do Zoom calls and I get access to R&D and what have you. And it just allows me to get better at what I want to be, which is a golf pro, to be fair. So there's so many, it's all been very, very exciting.
Wow, sounds cool. What about, what's the coolest place, like maybe a golf course that you haven't played?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would like to play the place I'd love to play the most is Muirfield Village, Jack's place.
Nice.
And I've been to Ohio, and I've been literally half an hour from that place filming with Titleist when the memorial was on. All the players came over and did their stuff, and I had a chance to film with like Spieth and JT and Cam Smith and Adam Scott and all the rest of it, which was really interesting and fun. But I would love to play Muirfield Village just purely because I've seen it loads. It looks fantastic. It's Jack's place, and I love what Jack is about. And also, it was the first Ryder Cup I ever watched, and I'll never forget watching that Ryder Cup and just thinking, I've never seen a golf course. Like, golf courses can look like that. You know, back in whenever that was, I was a young junior and I'd watched a bit of European Tour on like video cassettes and stuff. Roger Davies with his +4s hitting it round Saint Pierre, like little English courses. And then this like Ryder Cup came on, and it's in the sun, and like they're, you know, the course just looks ridiculously amazing. And I just thought, yeah, like to get there one day would be absolutely special.
Nice. Sounds good. Mark, like going back to your YouTube, getting that many views, you're going to get a lot of comments, a lot of good comments, but a lot of really bad comments. I say really bad comments. I don't know if this is like I've put down trolls. I don't know if that's offending anyone calling them that, but you get keyboard warriors by, you know, giving you shit basically. Like,
Yeah.
How do you deal with them?
Well, I don't really deal. I sometimes I poke the beast a little bit, and I shouldn't, because it's just quite fun to try and find out if the narrative is troll-like, or if there is actually any logic to it that I could learn from. You know, like people, I learn from people who are not golfers or not like golf pros. That's where I've learned most of my knowledge from. So I don't think it is a case that you have to really deal with them in any way. You know, if people are angry and upset or offended by a piece of content, I always think it's quite interesting that they actually stop to note and mark that down. I mean, I personally can't imagine stopping on a piece of content I didn't like, because I've got a finger and I'm able to scroll. Do you know what I mean? I'll keep going.
Move on.
Why would I stop and then take the time out to actually, you know, post a comment in a way that might be offensive? So I don't see that as a problem, as in I see it more as a reflection of the person. And if that person wants to publicly show themselves as that way, then that's also their freedom and choice. And maybe it's best that they do vent there and don't vent in other places. Maybe it's healthy that they get that out in that place and it comes out of them. I mean, I honestly don't know, and kind of don't really care. Like, I think they're a little strange, and I can't imagine ever wanting to react that way with something that I actively didn't like. But you know, people are people, and unfortunately they show themselves online to be what they are. That's so it's never going to change, is it? Like, it's no different to standing in a queue in a supermarket and someone pushing in front of you. It's the same. That person's just showing you what they're about. I mean, that's years and years of them becoming that person. You're not going to change it overnight, certainly in an online thread. So yeah, I don't see it as a problem. I see it more, I mean, it is, but it depends how you define problem. I see it like it doesn't really do any, it makes me giggle more than anything else. I think it's quite funny.
So it doesn't mentally get you down some.
Oh, no, it's comedy. It's comedy. I always think it's the same. It's similar. I used to say to people, I remember speaking to some people when I first started, saying, you know, if I'm walking down the street and someone on the other side of the road shouts out an offensive word to me, "Oi, Mark, you bleep," whatever word, what would you do? I'm just going to walk on and think, oh, is he drunk? Is he all right? Is that, like, that was weird. I'm not going to stop and then go, excuse me, you don't even know me. How dare you talk to me? Like, you would think, oh, he might have a knife or something. So I'm just going to walk on because he's obviously a little strange. So, and people are a little strange, you know, and sometimes for no fault of their own. There's mental health issues in the world. That person shouting on across the other side of the street might have a number of issues that are nothing to do with me. So I wouldn't take that shouting across the road as personal. I would just think more, okay, maybe he's drunk or high or, you know, something's happening. I'm not going to fix that. I'm just going to move on. So I see it similar to that. Like if you're going to come on and be that person, that you're basically shouting from across the street, like that never really achieved anything apart from made you look a little bit questionable of what your motives or kind of health state is like. So I feel more sorry for them that that's how they see this platform should be used. And I don't mean, it sounds patronizing to say that. I don't mean as in I feel sorry for them, because I literally don't waste any time. I just think, okay, I'll just walk on.
Yeah.
The content was quite clever and it was quite smart, and you've just thrown abuse and not even mentioned any of the points in the comments. So you are that person shouting from across the road. So, okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you allow that to have any effect on you, it would be more of a reflection that maybe you should be a bit more confident in what you're producing. It's you're confident that you're allowed to walk down that street. So that person shouting offensive you isn't going to stop you walking down that street, hopefully. And if it did, you would hopefully call the police and say, there's a person who keeps shouting at me from across the street and it's not fair. Can we sort them out? And online, there are plenty of tools to allow you to defend yourself legally as well if people want to be that offensive. So, you know, let them reap the punishments of what they deliver. Really, it's all quite clear out there.
Brilliant. That's good. So do you know how many of the 335k subscribers, how many have you like blocked? So how many would you have?
Oh, well, I don't block on YouTube.
Maybe you can.
I think you can. I might have blocked one or two, but I don't really. I don't think you can hide comments as well. But to be fair, I get so many that I try and read most of them now. But you get so many that, like, for one bad, there's 50 good. So like, why would I stop? Equally, like, why did they stop on the content? And why would I stop on that bad one? Again, some of the nasty comments, it's interesting as well. They actually have a point to make. It's just the phrasing of it. Sometimes I read it as offensive, and then you respond saying, well, could you ask, like, you know, how have you come to that conclusion? Because I actually said in the video X, Y, and Z. And then they'll often come back and go, oh, sorry, I don't mean, I meant I saw it as this. And you think, oh, right, so they've actually got a question. So maybe I've just read it slightly wrong, like that, or they've written it in a way that's been classed as offensive. But like, I am not the best writer by a long way. You know, I have issues with spelling and what have you. So I make loads of spelling mistakes and what have you. So I'm sure people get confused as well. So sometimes I think there's a lot of noise on those comments as well, which you need to be careful with as well. So they're not even really trying to offend. It's more that they kind of have by accident, because you can't tell the tone that easily on certain responses, can you? So you've got to be careful as well.
Yeah, so true. So yeah, messages can go horribly wrong.
Yeah, and I do think as well, people need to be careful. It's a responsibility for the audience as well. And I've said this for a long time, is that if people want to be actively trolly and rude, what it will do is it turns content creators, or it turns people who have any kind of public presence into media responses. So, for instance, a corporation just will not respond. I just ignore it. They got a blanket policy. So what happens then is you get these accounts that become really media stale. And I always think, come on, audience, you have a responsibility as well. Do you want that person to just write corporate-based tweets or comments? Or surely you want them to have some kind of honesty. That's the beauty of how we're reacting. So, but if you keep hammering them the way you are, why would they share their opinion? with you? What's the point if you're just going to constantly like smash it to the ground or even be really rude about it? So I think the audience have a responsibility as well to a certain extent, which most take, I think quite seriously. But just some, I just think, oh, you're going to turn that person into what you don't want them to be, which is like a Titleist or a TaylorMade or a Cobra or a Ping, or like they're not going to respond to idiots. They're just going to not even engage because it's a big brand. Why would they bother?
Have you seen? Sorry, interrupt. Have you seen on like I don't know what I can't remember what it's called now, but like someone creates like fake accounts of like Tesco customer service or whatever. So
do they?
Somebody will put like, oh, my cucumber's got a hole in it or something, and then this fake account replies with like the complete opposite to what a Tesco customer account would.
Okay, I haven't seen them, but it's interesting
hilarious.
You say that. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because obviously with the Patrick Reed debacle or whatever we want to call it, he did the rules to like that's a different debate. Even though he followed the rules to the T, so I'm not judging him at all when I say debacle. I didn't mean it that way. But it highlighted that possibly there was a burner account connected to him or his partner. And I have seen burner accounts from some of the most shocking of people. And that always we find very entertaining. To think that you would create a second account purely to try and like throw mud at someone. Like just imagine being that person. I think that one's really funny. Like we giggle at that one a lot. I love it. I love like there are some people I know now who have burner accounts and I don't think they know I know. And I just think, oh, that's so funny. Because like, what are you? You're a grown human being. What are you doing?
Funny.
So yeah, burner accounts are fun.
All crazy stuff. All right, Mark, I'm conscious of time. Can we have we got 2 minutes to talk about putting? It's a putting podcast. Let's talk 2 minutes about putting.
Yeah.
And you got 2 minutes to then give me the content for the Sainsbury's advert. Let's go. Well, I was going to talk about putter technology, but we've only got let's leave that. Let's go just like what are the biggest mistakes the amateurs make, and what advice can you give them maybe to improve their mindset or their technique or
the biggest mistake people make with putting, I think, is that they don't first off respect the equipment as much as they do maybe in the driver sector. So I do see an imbalance in how much they think a driver can improve their game compared to how much a putter can improve my game. We were talking before we started about the test I run recently with my 15-year-old daughter, who's a 30-ish handicap, and me as a pro, how different putter shapes made a massive difference to how we were able to aim or not. And the difference between both of us was huge as well, which just made me think like, come on, people, get fit, go and have more putter lessons. There are gains to be had there. I also think as well, I just don't see people practicing their putting enough. Like I've got a putter always in my office. I'm lucky enough to have a hole from Southwest Greens in my floor of I've got a putting green in my office here. See the green, they can't see obviously, but you can see that's a indoor putting green. It's the carpet basically. Yeah. So I will, when I'm editing and the computer has to render, so you have to leave it for 2-3 minutes, I'll just stand up, hit a few putts, work on my putt breaks a little bit right to the left. So I work on aim, I work on speed, because if the speed's not right, it goes across the face of the hole. I do think people just do not dedicate like 5 minutes a day, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, if you can, at home with something like a putt out or put into a coin or a cup or anything would have real benefits to their ability to go and hit that course and maybe control their putting a little bit more. So I think it's no different to most of the sector. I don't think enough people are getting fit stroke having lessons, and I just don't think people are really practicing it enough and finding the free low-hanging fruit that's out there for them.
Totally agree. Why do you think they don't practice though?
I think they find it boring. I mean, I've always found putting really exciting. I've always loved putting. I was always that kid who would be on the putting green for hours.
Me too.
I never practiced hitting the ball very far. For instance, I practiced hitting it straight, and then I practiced holding lots of putts. I regret that now, as in I would have spent less time putting because I spent excess time putting because I really enjoyed it. And I wish I had have worked on my body and physique and understanding club deliveries at different speeds. But that still doesn't mean that I wouldn't have practiced a lot of putting. because I still would have enjoyed it, and I still use it as one of my skills, my strokes gained putting when I was competing, not without measuring it, but I would have argued it would have been certainly in my peer group in the top group of putters, because it was a skill that I definitely used to compete with, where strokes gained driving accuracy would have been in the top group, but distance wouldn't have. So my overall strokes gained would have been very much in the 50 to 70% range of the field I played in. So yeah, I think people just don't find it as exciting enough. They just don't find it interesting. I can literally pick up a putter and swing with not out hitting a ball, and I can practice, you know, the lines that I'm seeing as I stroke it, the feeling of it in my hand and how I'm letting it pass my hands or not. You know, I find that interesting and exciting and something I want to do. So I think it's that desire of what people find interesting. You know, people do like going to the range and smashing it a long way. So I would argue it's possibly that more than anything else.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm like you. I'm like you. But yeah, it's interesting. When you say like you didn't measure, what would you recommend for golfers to measure their putting stats now?
Or any stat. I mean, if anyone wants to seriously improve, and I know this is boring, and I understand there's a big percentage of the audience who don't want to do this. I get that. They want to just play with their mates and have fun. And I'm not talking to them. But if anyone wants to actually make improvements, which is quite a lot of people, if you are not collecting stats using anything, Mark Brody's app, Golf Metrics, ShotScope, Arcos, anything that is measuring your performance in a more detailed way than just trying to work out, you know, how many putts you had per day, which kind of tells you nothing of the bigger story, is only going to benefit you to try and develop your skills and make sure you are concentrating. I mean, just imagine if we had strokes gained when I was a junior now, would I have tried to increase my distance? Absolutely. It would have been as clear as day what bits are I'm winning at and what bits I'm losing at. And what athlete, not that I was an athlete, but what budding sports person isn't going to try and improve the thing they're worst at? I'm not saying driving was my worst, because it would have won on accuracy, but it certainly wouldn't have won on distance, which would have certainly made strokes gained throughout the whole data set fall back. And I would have pushed that one on to push everything else on. So any kind of stats collection is good. Anything you can do to try and understand where you should dedicate your time. Is it more 6-foot putts, 10-foot putts? Is it 30-foot putts? What actually is it that is giving you low hanging fruit gains that you can make? Because the trouble is golfers work off emotion, and emotion, as we all know, doesn't allow us to make the best decisions. So if you are going to base your improvements solely on what you feel was good or bad each day, often when you get people to collect stats, it's eye-opening for them to see and start to understand actually what is causing those gains or not. And it's not always in the place that they emotionally feel it is.
Totally agree. I use Spider Putt. I don't know if you've come across that. I think
I haven't.
Wonderful app for putting, because it helps players with their practice.
Okay.
And it measures your practice against strokes gained, but also then you can put your stats in during a round and you can see left to right to left, different distances. So yeah, it's I'd say that the listeners go and check that out as well.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Mark, very gracious of your time. Thank you very much for coming on. Do you want to share with us the Sainsbury's?
Yeah, I honestly, I'd maybe do a video of me eating an apple as I walk around the store. See, I think I've got a better idea coming. It's just not come yet. That's all I've got at the moment.
So you got an apple. You eating an apple so far?
Yeah, that's all I've got at the moment. Yeah.
Mark, that was great fun. Really enjoyed it. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for your time. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.